And sometimes when you say you want to be something, life tests just how much you want to be it. And for me, that happened when I was 14 and I broke my leg during basketball practice. I'm not the first person who suffered a big injury during sports. And if they were able to overcome that and still become that professional athlete, then I felt as though I wasn't any different. And the worst thing I can do is actually try. And if it didn't happen, then I would be okay with it. But I couldn't settle with knowing that I never tried to see if I can overcome.
Did you see other people either before college, in college, or in the NFL that were broken by what they went through, like whatever injury that they sustained, just not be able to overcome it?
That happens a lot. You know, I wasn't the most talented person growing up in football. I actually was pretty terrible when I first started. But what stops people from making it to the highest level is that they don't overcome those injuries. They let the people come into their life and tell them, you know what, I don't think you're able to overcome this injury. And they don't even try. Whereas it's people who have the resolve to keep fighting and keep working towards a goal are the people who usually get their goals.
There was actually an amazing quote that you said, and it was, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it was like, if you fail, don't worry, that doesn't make you a failure. It just means that what you were going after, you didn't want badly enough.
Right.
And I thought that was pretty interesting. How do you find things that you want that badly? Like, how do you not fall prey to that, where it's just like, well, I'm going to give up?
I think people have to realize that they have to accept failure, but don't accept defeat. I think whenever you're trying to do something great, whenever you're trying to be successful, you're going to face failures, but it's those lessons in the failures that really take you to greatness. If you look at sports, when we go through practice, we fail all the time in practice, but they're controlled failures so that when it's really game time, when we step out on the field, when it really matters, we're able to execute because we failed so much in practice that we knew what we had to do in the game in order to succeed.
And how do you think about failure? What, do you conceptualize it in a certain way that it's like a learning lesson, or how do you keep it from damaging your ego?
It hurts. Don't get it, no doubt about it. Failure definitely hurts. But the way that you're able to overcome those failures is say, you know what? I failed because of this reason. I'm going to take these lessons. I'm not going to focus on me failing, but I'm going to take the lessons in the failure so that when I move on and I try to do something new, that I already have the equipment or the lessons in order to succeed the next time around.
So one thing that I like to ask guests, regardless of what I know about their kids, obviously I know a lot about Leah and the story of her going through the cancer. And one of the things that I found so interesting was that you couldn't fight the battle for her. She had to fight it herself. Mm-hmm. But you had made the decision that you were going to teach her how to fight. So one, how did you think about what you call the playbook? Like, how did you come up with the playbook? And what were the lessons, and what's it like teaching those to a kid?
So I came up with the playbook because going into my third year at the NFL, I sat down with the reporter and he had asked me a lot of questions, but the one question that stuck out to me was he had asked me, you've been the top dog your whole career playing sports. So what is it like to have to fight for your spot now in the NFL? And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I felt like he didn't understand what I went through in order to get to this point. So I started to go down a list of all the things that I went through in my life. And when I told him, he had this look of shock on his face. Like, man, I can't believe you were able to accomplish all this after going through all that. How was you able to do it? And that was the first time anybody had ever asked me that question. And I didn't have a good answer at that time. I just told him, I don't know, I just did. Fast forward a couple of months later, Leah got diagnosed with cancer. And I was crushed. I thought, when I heard the word cancer, I associated with death, and I thought my daughter was going to die. But I decided to do some soul searching and find out what did I have in me that allowed me to overcome all the obstacles that I faced in order to make it to the NFL. And it was really football. I've been playing football since I was 13, and it had been conditioning me my whole life without me knowing on how to overcome adversity, how to overcome obstacles. So I came up with a playbook that I was going to use to teach my daughter how to overcome the battle with cancer, because the beautiful thing about the brain is that we're able to condition it to think whatever we wanted to think and do whatever we wanted to do. And I wanted to condition my daughter to think like an athlete so she can approach this battle with cancer like a game.
So how does an athlete think?
Well, first, I feel like you have to have a vision. You have to set big goals for yourself. I tell people all the time, we hear, set obtainable goals that you can go after. But I honestly believe that you have to set big goals in life. And I compare it to the the Olympics with the high jump. You know, when you watch the high jump, when they're warming up, these people, they set the bar pretty low for themselves, right? And if you see these jumpers jumping over the bar, they're barely getting over the bar, which is, it's crazy to me. Because when I watch it, I'm like, you know, this guy's not gonna go far. He can't even clear the low bar. But as the event goes on and they start to raise the bar higher and higher, that same jumper is clearing the bar with no problem. And that made me realize that, you know, when you set the bar low for yourself, no matter how much potential you have, you only do enough to clear the bar. But if you set the bar high for yourself in life, you're gonna do everything you can to get over that bar. And sometimes you're gonna hit the bar, that's life. But if you set the bar high for yourself, you're still jumping higher than you would have if you set the bar low. So I wanted to set a big goal for my daughter, which was to beat cancer within a year. So what we did, when we set that big goal—
And that was, if I remember right, they had told you it was gonna take 2 years. So you literally cut that in half.
If it was successful, it would take 2 years. We didn't even know if she was gonna be able to beat this disease, but I knew if we broke that 2 year down in half, then we would work harder. What we did when we set that big goal is we broke it down into smaller goals. You know, so every time that she went in for chemo for 5 days, she would have a 21-day break in between. But we would celebrate after we got out the hospital in those 5 days, like we just won the Super Bowl. Because I felt like it was important for her to realize, you know, these are small steps that you're winning, but they're steps towards the bigger goal. So if you keep fighting, you keep building up these small victories, we're going to get the big victory in the long run.
Yeah, that's really important. There's a lot of studies that back that up. And one of the things that I found most fascinating, to your point about having really big goals, is that the person who says, oh, I want to lose 5 pounds, right? Their rate of failure is astronomical. And it's like 10 times worse than somebody who says, I'm going to go from morbidly obese to having 6-pack abs.
Right.
And you would think, how is that possible? But it's because people get excited. It's something that gets you amped up, which gives you that energy to keep pushing. Mm-hmm. Going back to your earlier quote about, if you fail, don't worry, it doesn't make you a failure. You just weren't excited enough about the thing that you were chasing. Now, how did you, in all of this, other than it's been well documented how playful you were with Leah through the whole process, dancing and celebrating like you guys have won the Super Bowl, how did you keep her focused and excited on what you guys were trying to accomplish?
I think when you're trying to lead a movement, you have to get the person to believe in it just as much as you do, or else it doesn't work. You know, so what I did with Leah is I made sure that she pictured herself being a cancer survivor before she actually was. And, you know, the interesting thing is I went to San Quentin prison a couple of weeks ago where I visited with some of the inmates. And one of the inmates had asked me, you know, how do you hold on to hope during dark times? Because he had been locked up since he was 18 and he got 54 years to life. And I was telling him that if you ever wanted to leave the prison, you first had to let your mind leave it first. Like, you may be trapped here physically, but once you get your mind out of it, you'll start to act a certain way. You'll start to do the things you need to do in order to get out of here. So what I did with Leah is I made sure that she saw that she was a cancer survivor. I made her wear the shirts. I told her stories about people who beat the disease. And I said, you know, they're no different than you. If you take this same approach, if you start to act like you're a cancer survivor now, then you'll do the things that, you know, cancer survivors does. You'll be able to fight through the pain that you had to fight through in order to get to your goal. And when I was able to get her to see how important it was to start acting like it before she actually was, then it was easy. It was easy.
That's incredible. It's doubly incredible given that she was 4 years old as you're going through this process. So I know we haven't gotten through all the things in your playbook, but really fast, tell us this story and where does it fit into the playbook of the crayons, which you're a better man than I, dude. That's like, honestly, I don't know that I could do that, but it's so impressive.
Right. That was a tough moment, but I think it was a pivotal moment for Leah's battle with cancer. And it's actually when she got rolled into the room after having the 7.5-hour surgery to remove her tumor. When they rolled her in there, I didn't even know it was my daughter. Like, she was really swollen. She was lethargic. She couldn't move. She couldn't talk. It was scary. But they had told us that it was important for her to be able to move as days go on. And I remember it was probably a day after her surgery or 2 days after her surgery. And at the end of her bed, there was a table with a coloring book and crayons. And she had just started opening her eyes and talking, and she had asked me if I could pass her the crayons so that she can color. And, you know, I jumped right up and told her, yeah, I'll get the crayons for you. But when I went to reach for the crayons, something stopped me. and was like, you can't do this. You're taking away from her moment. Like, this is the beginning of her fight with cancer, and she has to realize that she's strong enough to overcome whatever she's going through. So I sat back on the couch in the hospital room, and I told her, you know, I could get these crayons for you, but you have to get them yourself. You have to prove to yourself that you're capable of overcoming the pain that you're going through right now. And she gave me this crazy look, like she was mad at me, like, you didn't know I just went through a 7-hour surgery. But I didn't care because I knew this was her moment. So she started to sit up in the bed and she reached out for the crayons. She failed, and she fell back onto her pillow, and you can see just the look of disappointment in her face, you know. And at that moment, I kept questioning myself, is this the right time to push her? Like, just get the crayons for her. We'll try it another day. We'll try it tomorrow. But as you know, tomorrow is the worst word in the book, in the world, because tomorrow can never come. It can always go to the next day. So I said, no, we're going to do this right now. And I told her, come on, you can do this. Just try it again. Just try harder than you did the first time. And I promise you, you're going to get it. So she sits up and she starts reaching for the crayons again. And we're probably at the 2-3 minute mark now, her just trying to reach for the crayon. And she finally just jumps for it, grabs it, and falls back onto her pillow. And the look on her face of just excitement and overcoming and knowing that she was strong enough, I think was just the mentality that she took through the rest of her fight, knowing that, you know, I may be in pain right now, but I'm strong enough to overcome this. I grew up in the type of city where all it is drugs and violence. And actually going into my freshman year, I went home to go to a party with some of my friends, and at that party, I watched somebody get killed right in front of my face. And I told myself that no matter what I went through in college, that I was going to keep fighting, because I didn't want my family, I didn't want to have to raise my kids in that same environment that I was raised in. So when I faced adversity and I wanted to give up, I realized that if I give up, I'm letting a lot of other people down, and I couldn't do that.
Yeah, man, I get that for sure. What is your purpose now?
You know, it took for me to watch my daughter battle cancer to find out what my purpose was, because I always wanted to be in the NFL, make a name for myself in the NFL, but then my daughter's fight with cancer really brought a lot of perspective to my life and what's important. So I tell people all the time, I may not be playing football anymore, but I'm still in the game, and it's my game of life. I don't know what quarter I'm in right now, but as I tell everybody, you know, as an athlete, I'm conditioned to fight for 4 quarters. So what I want to do with my life now is just empower people, take the lessons that I learned from my pain and my obstacles to help people overcome their pain. Because as a competitor, I was taking so many losses, you know, and when you're an athlete, when you're a competitor, you like to win. And the way I looked at life is, if I'm able to take these lessons and help people change their life, then I'm going to win overall, because the more obstacles I face, the more lessons I learn, the more content I have in order to share with people. So I'm just looking to win the game of life.